Let's talk about the drought summit that took place today. And you got, I mean, Albo, this bloke is showing the muscle memory of the bloke who was on the losing team for the past few elections. Think about this, right? So today, the Prime Minister turns up, the Prime Minister who, by the way, the first thing he did, remember all that shit he copped about wearing the baseball cap? That was because the first thing he did as Prime Minister was get on a plane and get to to the areas affected by the drought. He's been all across it, and he came up to this drought summit today put together by our mates at the Daily Telegraph and had a whole collection of ideas, including making sure that there could be, you know, effectively a bipartisan approach when it comes to a special fund to deal with things like drought. Albo, he knows the Labor way is to lose an election. So you go into a room in the middle of a drought and say this.
Labor will support any funding for drought funding in terms of any level of cash that the government believes should be injected into communities, we will support. Our concern with the legislation that was introduced last time was that it took money from the Building Australia Fund, that's an essential component of Infrastructure Australia, and the idea that we would depoliticise infrastructure funding in this country in order to fund drought funding. Drought funding has merit in and of itself, just like we rejected saying that we'll use the Building Australia Fund to fund the National Disability Insurance Scheme.
Well, three-time loser, 13, 16, 19, bring on 2022, because this is a bloke who knows how to win elections. Here's the Prime Minister in Dubbo.
Anthony sort of needs to get over the pride on these issues. He is constantly looking for excuses to oppose things. So you've got to ask yourself about this guy. What's he for? And who's he for?
Well, Bronwyn, he's certainly Albo. He knows how to lose an election and he's getting ready. He's taken the 3-year run-up to lose the next one.
Well, when I watched him make that statement today, I picked him as my loser of the week. Because to say that he would only support a package for drought-affected people if it didn't come out of some other fund that he preferred and set up is absolutely unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. It shows a total lack of understanding about what is going on in those drought-stricken areas. It is terrible. I mean, I know people who are going around and they're taking packages of moisturiser for women who can't afford to buy moisturiser for their face or nice soap for their hands. Just a little thing to give them an easing of their circumstances. And this man comes out and says, oh, well, we'll give them a pittance here or a pittance there, but as long as you don't take it away from my pet project.
Yeah.
Absolutely loser of the week.
It's this thing, I mean, he's getting ready, 3 in a row. Can he make it 4?
No, I think he's made a fantastic point today, and I feel really strongly about this. You know, I've advocated harder than almost anyone on this show for drought-affected areas.
Correct.
Joined us all.
Excuse me, a lot of the impact of the drought as I travel, particularly in New South Wales. Can I say this, though? Albo today, as a classic example, gave that speech in an auditorium which had been built as a result of some of that infrastructure funding. If the councils are not getting this infrastructure funding, if the state is not boosting jobs and economic development in these regions with infrastructure funding, that is as problematic as it is not to receive.
That's a nice segue, but that's not what we're talking about.
I'm not arguing against infrastructure.
We're talking about $100 million a year for 4 years, which will come out of the fund that is set up for Infrastructure Australia.
And it should go to infrastructure. It should be a depoliticised
It is uncommitted funds.
It is not
uncommitted funds
until there is a report done on the need for infrastructure.
In the meantime, those people can go swing.
And then it will be invested in that infrastructure. To say that you're going to take money away from one infrastructure program that is desperately needed and would work as a drought stimulus in drought-affected areas is just backwards economics. It is completely backwards, crazy economics. The drought funding needs to be channelled locally through these local governments who know best what is happening in their area.
But no one's saying that's not what's going on.
That's not happening.
If that infrastructure investment is not made...
There's a $3.9 billion package, Linda.
It's going to cost jobs in the very areas
$3.9 billion
funding.
And this money that would go directly to farmers who need it is the one that Albanese won't go because he's absolutely still obsessed with infrastructure.
If that infrastructure
when he was
funding-
infrastructure minister and did nothing.
If that infrastructure funding is spent, it can be spent, for example, by the council to employ the farmers to build these things, give people jobs, and the community gets infrastructure. It's a win-win.